Hey guys, welcome back to the Stormforce Fitness Show with me, John Latok, and today we're going to be talking about how to deal with overwhelm. It's something that pretty much the entire world is struggling right now, and it's just been magnified by the coronavirus, lockdowns, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it's not a problem that has just come about in the last few months. It's been around for a good few years now where people are just being crushed by their own life. And we're going to talk about how you can reduce this overwhelm and kind of move past it and really start making the most of your life. And that includes health and fitness, obviously, at the core of it. So for me, the funny thing about overwhelm is that for a lot of people, it's because they're actually massively underwhelmed by their own life. So because they don't find particular value in the simple things that are kind of right there in front of them most of the time, they start to chase other things, and it is this chase, call it the rat race, call it whatever you like, that starts to cause this overwhelm, simply because nothing is ever enough. So we have to keep going for more and more and more and more and more. Now, that is not to say that you shouldn't have goals, you shouldn't be chasing things, you shouldn't be stretching yourself, but when we are chasing more and more, obviously it just starts to reach this sort of this crisis point, this feeling like your life is sort of creaking under the pressure. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it will eventually come crashing down. Okay, now, one of the things I've noticed is that we talk a lot about the sort of the middle class, the upper class, the lower class, in terms of money. And during the pandemic, there's been a few stories about how the billionaires have got richer. You know, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. What's also happening in terms of health and fitness is pretty much the same thing. Okay, so if you can imagine like the fit people, you know, we talk about influencers, celebrities, the knowledgeable people, they seem to be getting more and more knowledgeable. They're making more and more progress. There's more courses coming out, and it looks to the average person like the standards are just going up and up and up and up and up. Unfortunately, on the other end, other people are kind of stuck, they're confused, they have absolutely no idea what to do. And clearly it's not a kind of a knowledge problem. There's so much stuff. You could just go on the internet right now and you can find pretty much anything you want to find, certainly anything you need to get super fit, get lean, all that kind of stuff. And yet it's not happening. So, like I said, it's like the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and there's no middle class, as we call it. There's no happy medium where people are knowledgeable but able to apply stuff and just progressing all the time. They're not perfect, they're not celebrities, they're not fit pros, but they are getting very good results. And that was largely why I actually wrote my new book, which will be coming out in about a month, kind of probably middle of April, end of April, definitely, about the secrets of showing up. There seems to be this massive disconnect between this sort of lower class and upper class in the fitness world, and it's really not serving anybody apart from the people at the top. And unfortunately, it kind of feeds itself. Like if you're one of these people who wants to get leaner, you want to improve your body, you want to get fitter, maybe you see all these people throwing big weights around on the internet and you feel like you should be at that point, the natural reaction is to go and buy more stuff. You look for more knowledge, and what does it do? It doesn't really help you an awful lot because you're struggling to apply it, but it feeds this kind of knowledge machine at the top, the people who are making the money, and so it goes on. So we're going to dive today into why people are getting overwhelmed, and for me, part of it is an overexposure to too many areas of life. So again, in finance, you talk about overexposure. In other words, like all your eggs are in the same basket. So if you've got all of your money invested in one company or one particular industry, for instance, then if something happens to that company or that industry, you're going to lose a lot of money. Obviously, you can make a lot of money as well, but as we know, unless you're very knowledgeable about that stuff, the chances are you're more likely to get screwed than you are to actually come out well on the other side. So let's have a look at these different types of areas. We'll start with money because it is important and it's something a lot of us worry about. We get overwhelmed by not having enough. And unfortunately, again, it's because you're kind of overexposed to needing more. We constantly want like a bigger car. We want to have more things. We need to keep adding things to our houses. We've got to have more TVs and speakers and technology and all this sort of stuff. And essentially we start to live either at, like we can just about cope, or beyond our means. And like I said, it then becomes overwhelming because as soon as something happens, like the car breaks down or coronavirus, maybe you've been put on furlough pay, maybe you've actually been made redundant, all of a sudden now what is coming in isn't enough to cope with what is going out. You literally cannot maintain this lifestyle. So you're overexposed to your own lifestyle, and obviously it becomes overwhelming. You're like, well, where am I going to get this money from? So we have to look at how do we reduce our exposure, and obviously that is to look at where you are spending that you don't have to. And this is something I've done in business as well. It's not just like a personal thing. Is you've got to look at ways to kind of make more money. That's obviously not a problem, but are there areas where we can really reduce costs and stop spending? So I've done it in business, done it in my personal life as well. If you look around my apartment, it's a very simple kind of apartment. It's not because I couldn't afford more stuff, but I just know that essentially it won't really improve my life anymore. But what it is going to do is going to increase things that need to be insured. So insurance costs go up, things need to be maintained. And obviously if you build a life around particular things, then those things are going to break, they're going to get old, they're going to stop working. So you have to replace that. So the costs start racking up, and as I said, you are then teetering on this edge. If something happens in the way of income, you are suddenly overexposed and life becomes very overwhelming. So for me, it's a good idea to start gradually chipping away at the things you thought you needed that you really don't. Obviously I work in fitness and I see people with sort of 4 or 5 different pairs of trainers for all these different activities. That's just one example. If you've got 4 or 5 pairs of trainers, fine, you might be able to afford them now, but you've got to keep replacing them every few months. And that cost racks up over a lifetime. And that is obviously just a very small example. People often say to me, I thought you'd have a bigger car. Like, just because I'm quite a big guy, I've actually got quite a small car because I don't need a bigger one. Okay, obviously if you get kids and stuff and you got things, then you may need a bigger car. But sometimes it's just like a thing of, oh, now I've got more money, I should have a bigger car, I should have a bigger house. And it's really not the case. And this can be a very refreshing thing to do and really sort of reduce overwhelm in your life, because you start to see that actually you can live a very good life spending less money. Then there becomes less pressure to work so much and so on. Now, fitness, let's get straight into that. Again, we're very much overexposed when it comes to our fitness, more the other way, because we have such a low level of fitness. We've almost got like enough to get from one chair to the next. I've got to go from, getting up at home, I sit at the kitchen table, so long as I can get from that chair to the office, I'm ready to go. I can keep living. And then when I'm finished at the office, maybe I gotta get myself to the pub and sit in the chair, or going out for a meal, and then I go home, go to bed and do it all over again. So we get overexposed because obviously we've got such a low level of fitness, just enough to get us around barely. We could put a car in there as well. We go from kitchen table to car to office. It's all just seated. That's the only fitness I need. But then we get exposed at times because we look like an idiot because we can't do anything. If we suddenly have to walk quickly to get somewhere, we're in the airport and we're like, oh God, can't do this. You're blowing out your backside and got to have a break just to make your plane on time. Okay, that's obviously just a very basic example, but at the other end, we miss out on so many experiences in life. And as I said at the start of the episode, you then can't experience so much in your life. You're kind of underwhelmed by your life because it's like, well, I just can't do anything with life. There's nothing to do. It's not that there's nothing to do, it's that you're not physically capable of doing it, so you don't even begin to contemplate these things which would add so much value to your life. And as we said, a lot of fitness stuff doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to go out for a run. It doesn't cost anything to play sport on the beach, whatever it might be. But if you don't have the fitness to do it, again, you are exposed in that way of life. So this is why when we talk about fitness, it's not just about weight loss. It's like fitness literally opens you up to a better life and a life that doesn't cost much. Sure, it can do, like if you want to start doing triathlons and investing in that kind of stuff, then there are costs associated. But the point is that at the moment you are possibly very exposed to an underwhelming life. So when you get yourself fit and you can start to do more and more and more, you start to extract value from things that don't require constant investment in new things and buying this and buying that. Now, an extension of fitness, and I don't kind of class it as the same thing, is movement ability. So the ability to go through full ranges, to squat down, to bend over, pick things up, twist and turn without getting injured, without having pain all the time, or even just dysfunction where your body's like, it just doesn't work properly and I can't do it. So when we've got poor movement, again, we are overexposed, because if we slip on a pavement, we don't have the ability to control ourselves. We fall over, we get hurt. It obviously stops us from doing stuff for a few weeks. Maybe you put your hip out or break your hip, even worse. It kind of causes you to shrink into yourself. Like when you can't move, it cuts down the activities you can do pain-free. It cuts down the things you can do in the gym, so it's going to cut down the progress there. So again, we're living on this edge where if I'm sitting on a chair and I'm tapping on my laptop, tapping on my computer, I'm okay. But anything beyond that, and I am overexposed, and it's just going to stress me out. It's going to put more stress on my system, so I start to shrink into myself. So as we said, life starts to take on a very dull colour, because there's only so many things we can do, most of which involve staring at a screen, and we all know how bad that can make us feel after a few hours. And that reminds me of a point where some people say to me, oh, but you live a very extreme life, the extreme training you do. Listen, I have done some things which may be considered extreme, like you can probably see if I go that way. I've got the picture of my cage fight up there, cycled across America and Australia. But this isn't about doing those things. It's about enjoying life and the things that crop up during normal life and at weekends. But to me, actually, sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours every day for 30 or 40 years, that is extreme, because you are doing any one activity for hours and hours and locked in that position for years. That is extreme. What I do is to work on different areas of my fitness, ensure that my movement is still good, so I can do different things. I can cycle, I can do a cage fight, I can run. There's plenty of things I can do. Something that inspires me, something that excites me in my life, I can go and do it. And as a result, I'm not underwhelmed. I get joy out of my life, and a lot of other things unravel from that. Then another extension is health. A lot of people kind of interlink health and fitness. They are, of course, interlinked, but they're not the same thing. You can be healthy without being especially fit, and you can be fit without being especially healthy. So health is obviously something that massively in the news right now because of the coronavirus. And we look at the mess like people are in, getting into ending up in ICU, intensive care, and having all these problems. And this isn't to say that getting healthy and looking after your immune system makes you literally immune to everything, but it would make such a massive difference. And I get frustrated when I see the medical response, and we need more vaccines, we need more of this, when so many lives could have been saved if people had not been overexposed to this virus. Think how many people have caught the virus and they haven't died from it, they haven't ended up in intensive care, because they've taken the time to look after themselves and reduce their exposure, so they don't then get overwhelmed when something comes into their system, whether it is the coronavirus, whether it is the annual flu, the common cold. Like I said, it's not going to make you kind of invincible, but it does greatly reduce the risk. And like a lot of the things I'm talking about, it creates this buffer zone where you can sort of operate in this zone, sort of maybe when you're at your peak, you're here health-wise, and then a virus or something similar might sort of drag your health down a little bit, but you're still in this zone where you're okay. You don't suffer serious problems, you don't really get particularly bad symptoms. That's the whole point of an immune system. Okay, it's not to make us invincible, it's to have the soldiers there to fight off various things. So look at your health. People are literally living at the base level of health. Even when we look at things like vitamins and minerals, if you ever look at the back of a supplement or something like that, it will often have the RDA, the recommended daily allowance. Now, most of the time, that is simply what the government has determined people need to have to not get seriously ill. And we can link that back to the coronavirus and vaccines and stuff, where really the whole idea is like, how do we get less people to die? It's good. It's a good place to start, but it doesn't help you to kind of to thrive and to make the most of your life. And again, that is why people get underwhelmed by their life. They're constantly feeling sick, tired, fat, exhausted. So they look outwards to find stuff to solve that, whether that is material things, various types of addiction, whether it is sexual, drugs, or anything else. We're constantly looking out, and it's not a great way to live. So think about how you can create these buffer zones in your life, essentially how you can take action steps so you do have this area where if things go wrong, which they will, it doesn't become overwhelming. But the trouble is we've kind of started pushing ourselves to essentially redline as much as we can. Work is the same. How can I cram the most amount of work into a day? Unfortunately, that has come about since the Industrial Revolution, where the fat cat in control of the factory was like, right, how can I get people to essentially get the most amount of widgets onto and off the production line within a working day? And that's how we really sort of came up with this 9 to 5 idea. It was like, once the sun had come up and you get to the factory, you work as much as you can. We'll give you a little bit of a break, really not just for you, but we want you to recover a bit of energy so you can keep doing more and more work. But we live in a different environment now, in front of computers and stuff like that, where actually we're not doing particularly good quality work. And we know that taking more extended breaks, having more time to ourselves, having time off to just do what is effectively playtime, it actually massively increases our productivity at work. So I appreciate this might be a difficult thing to do. If you're working for somebody else, they will load expectations on you, and it is something that requires a bigger change in terms of an organisational system, and also kind of systemic things on a government level, and really how we live our lives, the whole of society. So I don't think you're going to go and sort this out in over the weekend, but it's something to start thinking about. Is there a conversation you can start within your business? There's plenty of startup businesses and a lot of the tech companies now, they understand this. Okay, because they're not stuck in the old ways. They brought in these processes. I think it's Google that gives employees something like 15-20% of their working time is basically, they have a name for it, but it's essentially do what you want time, like work on your own, well, not do what you want, but work on your own projects. And a lot of great ideas come from this, new working practices, new products, new services, and obviously Google is doing pretty well for itself. So it does work. So is there a conversation to be had where you have this buffer zone at work, whether it is for a little bit of free time, whether it is flexible working hours, whatever it might be, it makes a hell of a difference. Okay, so again, you don't get overwhelmed by work. Work has come to be this thing, I do it because I have to pay this inflated mortgage I have, which I don't really need. I have to have it to pay for this big car and this loan that I don't really need. So you start to see how these things come together and do hugely affect mental and physical health. So have a think about work as well, massively important. Relationships as well. A lot of relationships are basically on a knife edge because of all of this stuff. We're constantly working as much as we can. We've got the costs are as much as they can be, right? How much do we earn together? Right, we're spending that. But again, constantly on this edge, and then when something takes us over that edge, we get overwhelmed, the relationship starts to fall apart. So where is the buffer zone in your relationship? Where is the time off from the kids? Can you have a day off each or an evening off each? Work things, and I have conversations like this almost daily. And again, not easy. I hear people say, oh, because my husband this, my husband that, my husband needs to, my husband has to. So, is there an imbalance in this relationship? Is this a conversation that needs to be had? And it seems to be harder for women to say these things, because I think it's a bit of a sort of matriarchal thing. Women do tend to be more affected by the emotions and hormones around social connections. So they tend to play this sort of martyr role a little bit more, where they're trying to be selfless and give of themselves to look after the kids and so on. Totally understandable. But what we often find is actually in the short term, medium and long term, it doesn't really suit anybody. Okay, you're constantly tired, exhausted. You're not giving as much as you could to your work, so problems come about there. You're not giving as much to your kids, you get angry with them, you start to kind of resent the time that they take from you. You certainly don't relate very well with your partner. And again, we get literally overwhelmed by relationships, which should be really the foundation of feeling good and something that we can always fall back on. Relationships as well, we can take a little different angle on this in terms of social media. Like our relationships used to be, we had a small group of friends, we had a relatively small family unit, and we had some colleagues. And that was it. And from what I remember, we all got on pretty well. Now, obviously, we've got all these social media connections and friends, and it creates so many problems again because we're constantly overwhelmed by the amount of connections we're trying to maintain or keep up with. There's so many, literally you're reading 100 stories in a day. Oh, what's he doing? What's she doing? And it also creates what we call opportunity cost. So in other words, let's say I choose to do a particular fitness program and I start it, I've been going for a week, and then I start to see, the 5,000 people I follow on social media all doing different things. Someone's doing bodybuilding, someone's doing powerlifting, someone's doing CrossFit, someone's coming to Stormforce. It's like, I can see the benefits of all of those and they all seem to be doing well, but then you start to kind of mix it all, and as a result, you get absolutely nothing out of any of them. So the opportunity cost is once I commit to one thing, I lose out on these other 50 things. So you have to start wondering whether you need to be following all of these people. Can you find one source of high quality fitness information? Me. Can you find one source of, maybe you find a source that gives you reliable news? I don't know if you ever really need to watch the news anyway, but have a think about that. Like, why are you following these people? What do I get out of following this person? Have I just followed them for years because I met them in a bar one day and they knew a friend? That we have so many of these connections that are absolutely pointless, provide no value to our life, but they create a massive amount of overwhelm simply by being in our face all the time. And we can get thrown off what we're doing, which is working particularly well, just because we're following a load of people that we don't even care about. And if Facebook chose to remove them from our feed, we wouldn't even notice. But we see what they're doing. We're impacted by, they look like they're doing bodybuilding and they've got a bit bigger. I should do that. So think about that. How can I reduce this fear of missing out by reducing the amount of things that I'm worried about missing out on? If you can't see these things, you're not going to be worried about missing out on them. Okay, so think about how your relationship's working. So we've gone through a few things there that obviously need a bit more exploration, and for everybody's life it's going to be a bit different. But the point is that everything in life, we're redlining it. There's no buffer zone. There's no space to allow new things to come in. I heard a great thing the other day that we've forgotten how to be bored. We say we've got no spare time, and yet the reason we don't have any spare time is because we fill it with other stuff that we don't always have to do. It's always, but I have to be at my church group. I have to be at my, this social do that's happening. I have to go and see this person. I have to make this. It's like, you don't have to do any of that. You're telling yourself you have to do it. Explore why you feel that commitment, why you feel that you have to give up your own life and happiness to keep propping up other people. And that doesn't mean be selfish and push everybody away. Quite the opposite. What it means is if you learn to take care of yourself, you learn to get your fitness in the right place, your health, you reduce your stress levels by reducing how much money you need to make each month and spending. When your movement's better and you feel looser and freer in life, you start to be a better person. You start to be happier. You start to be better to be around. And as a result, you'll be amazed how much your relationships improve, how much more useful you become to other people. Like sometimes I think people think I'm very single-minded and I'm just doing what I want. And to a point, that is true. But actually, it's also because I know when I am working, I'm very good at what I do because I'm energetic. I've got time to study so I can make things better. I make the business better for myself, so I make more money. I reduce my spending, so I've got that nice buffer zone. I feel better about life, and so it goes on. And as a result, I start to achieve more and do more things. It's not stressful things, though, it's things that I want to do. Then I've got stories to tell everybody, and so life rolls on. Okay, so I hope that helps you. It's like I said, it's a very quick jump into something that needs a bit more of a deep dive. But go away and have a think. Like, really be honest with yourself about, do I need this? Instead of thinking about how can I get more to cover the costs of my life and to get through all of this stuff, ask yourself how I can need less. Okay, it's a bit of a sort of Buddhist way of thinking. Doesn't mean you need to go full Buddhist. It just means you need to be a bit more aware of what you're telling yourself you have to do. What is a requirement? What am I forced to do? Most of the time, you're really not. Okay, it's your thinking around a particular thing and your perspective that is driving you to feel that, and then you're clambering to find more and collect more and accumulate more to kind of cover it all up. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, watching, however you're kind of interacting with me right now. Admittedly, I am still very small fry on the internet and I'm trying to get a bit more coverage, so I would massively appreciate if you could share this with anybody you think needs to hear it or will benefit from it. Make sure you follow Stormforce Fitness on iTunes, the Stormforce Fitness Show. Subscribe on YouTube, and obviously you can come and find me, John Latok, on social media channels. So I will be back very soon, and I hope you have a really good week.